Welcome back to the If I Knew You Better podcast. I'm Brendan Davis, coming to you from lovely Los Angeles in stay-at-home mode. And this week's guest is an old friend of mine who I've been meaning and wanting to get on a show for quite some time. And we're finally doing it today. I am really pleased to welcome my friend, originally an actress turned studio executive turned producer, Denise Carlson. How are you, Denise?
I am pretty great, actually. You know, this whole lockdown stay-at-home thing is interesting, but it's not terrible.
Yeah.
It's,
how's it
it's
treating
Los
you?
Angeles, and it's kind of nice here.
Yeah.
I'm okay.
You got your
I'm okay, yeah.
You've got a little bit of your pet menagerie at home to keep your heart full and keep you busy in between your remote working.
I do. I have my dogs, and I'm fostering some kittens right now. So, I'm the crazy kitten lady.
Well, this is to your
And then
credit.
I'm working,
Yes,
of course.
Yes, and I know you for the
Working
sake of...
from home is easy.
Yeah, and I've done that even when I, had jobs, when I was exec in a Chinese film company, and it definitely did have to go to the office. But I mean, so much of the work is in those moments after work or between things, to and from. It just kind of never stops. And you're a very busy producer, and also we met when we overlapped. I was on and off 6 years, teaching there in the producing program at New York Film Academy with you, as well as film program and other things. And so you're actively helping to do some young mind shaping and nurturing and boxing, challenging these young minds. So why don't you give us a little bit of your background for the sake of filling in the gaps, and then we'll kind of launch into it.
Okay, well, as you said, I moved out here. I don't even want to talk about when, but I moved out here to be an actress. That was what I studied, and not that it was pretty quick. I realized that there were a million people who looked like me, who were blonder and taller and better connected, and I thought, really difficult, and I still want to pursue it as much as I can, but is there something else I could be interested in doing? And so I looked around, and ultimately what I ended up doing was getting a job at the William Morris Agency. I got a job there. It was just William Morris then. It's William Morris Endeavor now, one of the big agencies. And after a little while there, I managed to get into the agent trainee program. And that was an interesting experience. I highly recommend getting some experience at an agency if you are starting out in the business, because honestly, you get to know who matters, who doesn't, how things are done. It was fascinating. And the people that you are, the people that you're like assistants with or whatever are going to be running the business in 10, 15 years. So there you go.
Yeah.
So I did that. And I ultimately realized that I didn't quite have the personality to be an agent. It's a very specific, especially at a big agency like that. You have to be a very specific kind of person in order to be successful. And it wasn't me. It didn't fit my personality. So I left there. I started a business doing research and also reading scripts and doing evaluations for people. I had a lot of clients, including a lot of agencies and companies and things like that. And I did that for a number of years. That was really great in one sense, because I learned a lot about story structure and what makes a good screenplay. And that was really important. And also because ultimately that led to Disney Channel offering me a job, because I was one of their main readers. And then for a while, I was the only person who was reading scripts for Disney Channel.
Wow.
And Disney Channel was trying to, Disney Channel was trying to redo their whole structure, because they were making these movies that were aimed at kids. Disney Channel is, if anybody doesn't know, they are a family-centric cable channel, and their main target audience is kids, depending on what part of the schedule you're talking about. It's preschool and kids 8 to 12 and things like that, and also their parents. So they made these movies that were wonderful movies, but that were really more the kind of things that adults thought kids should be watching, and kids were maybe sometimes watching, but not so thrilled about.
Yeah.
So we took a look at that, and I was part of the group brought in to reinvigorate and reinvent what Disney Channel original movies were. And so we ended up making a new brand, basically doing movies that were more about kids being empowered and having agency over their own lives. And it was a lot of fun, actually, creating this whole new brand. And in the course of, I was there for 9 years. Basically, I worked on 47 movies while I was there. When you are it's a lot. And being an executive at a cable channel or studio, or cable channel especially, it's different at different places what your scope of responsibility is. But at Disney Channel, basically, you are involved in every single aspect of that movie. So I would take the pitch. I would hopefully, pitch it to higher ups and get it sold to the network. I would then work with the producer and writers in developing the project, hopefully get it greenlit, and be involved with the project through pre-production, production, and then post, and until it aired. So 47 movies was a lot of movies. The biggest movie I worked on, the biggest franchise I worked on, was the High School Musical franchise. I brought that in.
Right.
I was the person that it was originally pitched to. I worked on the first one throughout, and the second one I began the development of. And then I ended up leaving Disney Channel. I left to make my first foray into the world of independent film, which is a very different world. It's interesting because, there's so many different facets of the entertainment industry, and they are all very different and yet similar. So a lot of the same kinds of things have to happen, but they happen in different ways depending on what you're doing. So independent film, I worked with these friends. We had this film that was that we were developing. It was set in Washington State. We spent a year developing the script and looking for investors and doing, some soft, pre-production investigation into like how we would shoot this thing. And we managed to get a first investor who put in, the budget was about $1.2 million at the time. And we got an investor who gave us $100,000. He was a Seattle-based billionaire whose daughter was into acting. And he said, "Hey, give her a small role and I'll give you $100,000. And that was great. And that's important to have, because then you can tell people, yes, someone besides us cares about this movie. Exactly.
This got cut out a little bit, but you were saying basically you had an anchor investor. You had somebody that you could show everybody else, hey, look, this smart rich person who made all this money believes in us and gave us this actual money. So, and they did their due diligence. So that makes other people more, less reluctant to jump on because they see, oh, this smart person gave them money and they're not a dummy.
Exactly.
And they must have done a lot of research.
Exactly.
And other people that can overcome that resistance. Yeah.
It's huge having first money in. That's why sometimes when you're looking for investors, it's a really good idea to maybe, give a little bit more of a little bit higher percentage of return on profits to your first money, because getting that first money is hard.
Yep.
It's really hard.
Yep. Yeah,
So we got
that's
him.
that's been a big milestone. My current main project. Yeah, I mean, we have it now. We have our anchor, and I won't get into the details, but yeah, we have an anchor.
That's enormous.
Who's like a
Congrats.
respected private equity guy. Well, it's made all the difference, lately to get that person inked. I mean, versus just conversation. But yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow. I just wanted to. First, I jumped in because Skype cut it out, but I knew what was missing, and I wanted to fill that in for folks. But so you did. So you got that picture. You got that first money in on that movie. Did that one go to your satisfaction?
We got that money. Then we managed to. It took a while, but we got the rest of the money from an investment group based in San Diego, and their money was coming out of Germany. It was great. We started doing our prep. We started casting. All of that, and then all of a sudden we stopped hearing from him, and it was like the money was delayed. It wasn't in the bank account. It was supposed to hit the bank account, Tuesday, Thursday, next Monday, whatever. Well, it was 2008. So basically what had happened, the investment group disappeared. It was the worldwide financial meltdown, and the German money dried up. The investment group in San Diego went bankrupt.
Mm-hmm.
So we suddenly had no movie. We had no financing. We had no movie.
I had the same thing. I had a very similar thing happen in the financial crisis where, international investment and, it killed basically everything that was going at the time. And we were one of the last ones. We were actually casting.
Thing that we had done is because the investment group in San Diego had told us, go ahead, just start hard prep, go ahead. And so we hired a casting director and we had casting sessions, the same thing as you. And we ended up finding our cast. And all I can think is, thank God we had not negotiated our deals with the cast.
Yeah, you didn't have
because if we'd had pay or play deals with the cast, we would have been so screwed. Yep. But it was just before that when they disappeared. So thank you, God, for a little bit of grace. But we ended up having to go to our original investor because we owed, like everything disappeared, we owed casting director $30,000. And the reality is we owed it to them because they had done their job and they'd rented space and all of these things. So to pay them, we had to find a way to pay them. So we had to go to our first investor and ask him if it would be okay if we used $30,000 of his investment to pay them, and then we would use the rest to make a 3-episode web series with his daughter as the lead. And he was okay with it. And that's how we managed to pay them off. And we were very fortunate that we could do that.
Yeah, that's a really good plan B, considering. Especially given what we know how that played out. I mean, so many companies were wiped out, and the fact that you were able to recover to some degree is good on you.
It was the only thing we could think of to do. It was like, I don't know what else to do, but okay, let's try it and see what he says. And the guy he was fine with it. He just wanted to make his daughter happy. Yeah. She was thrilled.
Yeah.
I got Lucas Grabeel and Drew Seeley, who had Lucas was one of the leads in High School Musical, and Drew actually was the singing voice for Zac Efron in High School Musical, and he's now a Broadway star. Mm-hmm. He's fantastic. He's a wonderful actor, and a Broadway actor and singer and everything. And so they were the leads opposite her, and she was happy, and her dad was happy, and we were happy because we didn't know anybody $30,000 anymore.
Well, that's a nice. That's a nice.
Oh God! But I mean, I always tell people the lesson I learned with that, because I had come from the world of television.
Yeah.
And in television, and especially when you're working for a big company like Disney, if something is greenlit, the money is there. Right. You don't even have to think about it. It's like the money is there. And I had never experienced the world of independent film before.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't understand until that moment that, oh my God, you can have spent money that you thought you had, and now you suddenly don't.
Yeah, that's a rude awakening.
And it was oh my God, it was a sobering lesson. And I was not very happy about that lesson, but
I
it
can
was a
totally
good one.
relate. I've been in a couple of companies where, I was involved in the financing, but not at like a studio or a network where there was where it was in place. I mean, there were maybe some more hoops to jump through and some track laid, but it wasn't automatic. So I've always, in an alternate reality, I would love to have all that experience, knowing what that's like, because that aspect of independent filmmaking
You don't even think
absolutely
about
sucks.
it.
I absolutely hate I've gotten, I think, fairly good at the business by default and out of necessity over the years, but it was not easy. It was really hard. One, how did you, how did you post that exciting baptism by fire?
Oh, Jesus.
How did you sort of approach it from that point? Once you got your head around, this is how this works. Hey.
This is how this works. It's been really difficult, I mean, honestly, I haven't really made a whole lot of films. I made a movie for Disney Channel. I developed it with a partner. In 2015, we made this movie called Bad Hair Day, but we were developing it and we were trying to make it, pitching it around town. It had been it was what we called a busted feature. So that means it's a feature that had been written, had been pitched around town and ended up not, getting a lot of interest, but ended up ultimately not getting made. And then to grab it. And we got it made at Disney Channel. It was a really nice little movie, actually. But the thing, I mean, that was me going back to my old roots, but being on the other side of the table, which was also quite interesting because it's a very different experience being the executive and being the producer. So you see both sides of things. Even though, you're involved in everything. We ended up shooting that film in Montreal. It was the movie was originally, so I'll just tell you, the script was originally basically sort of Dirty Harry meets Prom Queen. So it was like a retired cop is still rankled by the case that went awry, this missing necklace and a crook that got away. And he's still trying to solve that crime. And this teenage girl who winds up with the missing jewels that were stolen, and the two of them end up catch the criminal. Well, that's the original script.
Okay.
Lots of stuff set in San Francisco, crazy stuff. We ended up selling to Disney Channel, and the 70-year-old Dirty Harry type cop turned into a 30-something-year-old female cop who wound up having another dog. It was Disney Channel. So we had to really find a way to retool the script to fit the Disney Channel model because they wanted to buy it because they were interested in finding a piece of material that was specific to a certain actress and their certain what they were looking for. And having worked there, I knew that could happen because we did that all the time where suddenly it would be like in the original 50s, but it is to be 20s, or you have to find a way to make that work, or we need to make it a woman, or we need to that happens all the time. And it's one of those things that you kind of have to be open to if you're dealing with, especially if you're dealing with like a network, because they know what their mandate is. They know what holes they're trying to fill in their schedule. They know what actors they're trying to find a role for, trying to work with. And you may not know that.
Right.
So it's always an interesting challenge.
Yeah, that's
so I did that.
Yeah, that's one
we
of the
made that movie.
Sorry, we had a little bit of a Skype collision for the sake of people listening. We have a particularly wretched Skype connection that I'll be editing around a few little gaps.
Well, of course
and such,
we do.
But well, and it's normally pretty rock solid. I actually like Skype better than Zoom typically, but hey, once in a while you get the Wi-Fi, you get the Skype gods are not on your favor. But we're making it work. It's the important part's all coming through. Do not despair. So please continue though. I was trying to interject simply that that is one of the biggest rude awakenings if you're coming from the other direction where you've been used to, to independent production, where I'm thinking you may not have put together a package that everybody wants. It may be a hard sell for those, but the bottom line is you can, at least when you're getting going, you can kind of decide who lives and who dies in terms of your characters and your how you're going to do it. But trying to, if you want to fit within an existing system, I mean, they have a machine and they have, that machine has needs, and that machine may need, instead of a dirty, hairy cop, they may need a 30-something female, non-dirty, hairy cop in the role, to use your example.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, I have to say, I think the script ended up better. So I love the movie that we made. I think it was terrific. And I mean, obviously, if you don't have teenage kids or you aren't 20-something, you probably haven't seen it. But I love that movie. I think it was. I'm really, really proud of it. It was great.
It got a lot of
we
good,
shot it in Montreal.
I remember it got a lot of good notices when it came out. It got a lot of good vibe on it, from what I remember.
Yeah, it was great. And I mean, that was the other thing though. Apart from changing the age, we had to be willing to change. It was very specifically set in San Francisco,
like working, and
we were shooting it in Montreal. Yeah, and so we had to be flexible. It didn't really specifically say where it was set in the actual movie, but we couldn't use some of there was a big chase scene on the cable cars that are in San Francisco. Right. Well, Montreal doesn't have.
Yeah, it's pretty specific.
So we had to be flexible about how to make that work, and you just do have to. You can't. I mean, you can sit there and say, yeah, no, I don't want that, and I want to hold out being able to shoot it with cable cars in San Francisco, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Or I really want the character to remain, 70-year-old Dirty Harry, but then you may never get your movie made.
Yeah, you might be standing on principle with that script in a drawer, basically.
Which happens all the time. I don't know if people know this, but the original John Wick character, which is played by Keanu Reeves in the movie, and which has been an enormously successful franchise, the original character was a 60 or 70-year-old retired cop. That is not Keanu Reeves.
Yeah,
he is not 60 or 70.
Yeah.
So, or a retired killer, rather. Sorry, not cop. So, it was kind of more like the Dirty Harry character that was in our script was the original character in John Wick, and but you get a chance to have. Getting a chance to have Keanu Reeves in your movie,
sure.
I think I'll rewrite it for that.
Sure.
I think I'll go for that.
So after Bad Hair Day, what was sort of the next thing that you've been working on? I know you've got a couple things coming out. We'll instead of saving this for the end of the show, you have a few projects recently that you're excited about. Let's talk about that, and then we'll I want to do some sort of producer to producer nerdy type questions.
Well, so I mean, since Bad Hair Day, I've worked on development on a lot of projects, and then I got the opportunity to work on a docu-series with a friend of mine. So this friend of mine actually was a producer who did a movie for me when I was at Disney Channel, and we've remained friends ever since. And he became the exec producer. He was hired to be an exec producer on a docu-series called It's a Dog's Life, which is a show. It's a really cute show about dogs and the jobs they do for us. And the host is Bill Farmer, who has been the voice of Pluto and Goofy for the last 30 years.
That's so cool.
And I know, and he's a lovely man. And it's just a charming, fun show. And we really had such a great time making it because so Phil, my friend, reached out to me because of my experience with Disney, and also because I'm kind of active in animal rescue.
Right.
And so he thought I might be good to work on the show, and it was just the most extraordinary experience. I'd never done a docuseries before. I mean, I have to say, the biggest thing, the smartest thing I did with regards to this was when Phil called me and asked me about this, I just said yes. I didn't like go, oh, I've never done that. I mean, I thought that,
Sure.
but I was like, I just went, you know what? Yes, because I thought if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But what the hell? And it was one of the best creative experiences of my career. We were working with just this amazing group of people. It was something very different that I've never done before. I learned a tremendous amount from doing this show. And I am so proud of this show. It dropped the first episode on May 15th. And it's on Disney Plus, and it drops an episode a week. It's like we got to work with dogs who did everything from sheep herding to acting in movies to surf pros.
That sounds awesome.
I know, it was great. I was a producer on a segment that featured Monty, who was the dog who played Tramp in in the live action Lady and the Tramp.
Oh, okay.
I got to tell you, that dog has an amazing story. He was a shelter dog. He was like on the streets, and he was picked out of, like, they did a nationwide shelter search, and they found him, and he's adorable. He's got a great look. He's a sweet, sweet dog. And I mean, you got to love the movie. So we did a segment on him, and we did, and he's living this great life with his trainer and his trainer's family, but he also will be acting again.
Cool.
And then, like, there are other dogs too. Like, one of my favorites was Jojo, Super Corgi Jojo. He's called Super Corgi Jojo. He surfs. He's this corgi who had he had an accident. He was hurt very badly, and then he needed to go through rehab. And a lot of it was water-based rehab. And his owner thought, I see dogs out at the beach, and I see them even surfing. I wonder if my dog would be interested in that. And Jojo was like, hell yeah, I love doing that. Yeah, it was great. And it's interesting because they have two corgis. The other corgi hates the water, so is like not so into the surfing thing, but Jojo loves it and competes in dog surfing competitions and has won them. And so
I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't even know that was a thing,
Who knew? And so we went to, there's a thing called Corgi Beach Day, which happens twice a year. Again, who knew? And it's awesome.
People with corgis knew,
it was so much fun.
I know that was rhetorical, but
people with corgis
I like to answer rhetorical questions.
It started like 15, 16 years ago with like 15 corgis, and now it's like over 1,000 go.
Jeez.
It is amazing.
That'd be the wrong day to show up with your cat at the beach.
You would not want to do that, no. Or even another dog that's not a corgi.
Yeah, another dog, yeah. You roll up with your German Shepherd.
Yeah, it was great though. I mean, it was fun shooting that. The dog, I mean, we did a little surf lesson with the dog and Bill, our host. And honestly, I mean, you watch this dog and you can totally see him loving what he does. We did like, segments with truffle hunting dogs and bomb sniffing dogs. And, I mean, it was just, dogs who help, people who have disabilities. We did segments on all kinds of dogs, water rescue dogs. And it was an amazing show, and I'm really hoping we get a season 2.
Well, that's really cool. How did you? Let's actually get into this a second, because I mean, again, you do animal rescue, and that's anybody who knows Denise Carlson knows that's part of who you are. How did you get that soft spot? How did you develop that? Have you always been this close to animals, or was there a
Yes.
specific thing that happened? Or
I've had animals all my life. I love them. I was very lucky. My mother was a big animal lover, so that helps too. She did volunteer work with the Humane Society and things like that. And so I've always had pets. When I was a kid, we lived in suburbia, really, not on a farm or anything like that. And I had dogs, cats, guinea pigs. I had a worm farm. I had a duck. I had just this crazy, I had hamsters. I had birds. I had all kinds of animals as pets. And it was great. I learned to love animals and to really care about them. So I try to take that into everything I do. I know not everybody feels that way, but I feel like it's really important.
well, so. I think it's really cool work that you do with that, and it's good on you, and I'm sure the animals appreciate it.
So, I hope so.
Nice. Well, I want to ask, because I mean, I've known you a long time, and we've had a lot of very candid conversations about the business and how things work and such, and so that's part of the treat for me to get you on here. And I'm interested, what are some of those? One of the things that when I was teaching, and now whether it's helping somebody who's still developing, or who's basically asking me for advice, and for God knows what reason, and I always try to I answer the question specifically, but then I always try to do some sort of a value add of what is not, maybe it's not even directly relevant at that moment, but it's going to be important for them. It's going to be important for them moving forward. I'm curious about some of those lessons learned, from, again, you're being a trainee at the old William Morris, through working for the Disney empire, in television, and now independent producing. I'm curious, what are some of those things that maybe we did try to teach you in film school, but that are really hard to learn? What are some of those little secret bits of insight about how to deal? I mean, part of it you just mentioned. I mean, to get us started on this train of thought, we just talked about one, which is that if you're at a studio/network, if the thing's greenlit, then usually you're done raising money. Somebody's had to do it. Somebody's had to appropriate it, or maybe there's a studio partner on a giant movie. But the fact is that basically you're funded. But what are some of those other things that you sort of picked up along the way in terms of how to approach a producing career? I think that's probably the best way for me to ask this succinctly. One of my mentors is a producer named Barry Berg, and I had Barry speak for some students once at Warner Brothers, and basically he had a lot of great quotable lines, and he does in general. But one of them was he essentially said, there are thousands of jobs in the film business, but there are really only two kinds of careers: long and short. And how you and how you approach your career is going to determine whether it's long or short.
Oh God,
I love that. Right? She was laughing pretty.
That's
profoundly.
Awesome.
Isn't that great? That's a good one.
That is great.
But what are some of your bits of wisdom along that sort of general line?
So, I mean, some of it is sort of the standard line. I mean, honestly, the things I have gotten more jobs and opportunities through my friendships and my connections. So you've probably heard this too many times already, but network, make connections. Whatever connections you make early on, stay in touch with them. It's hard sometimes to stay in touch with them, although it's easier now in the era of, so much social media and all of that. But definitely stay in touch with people. And, I think approaching it in a way of not, hey, what can you do for me? But what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Is a good way, I think, to approach people. If you can approach them and say, hey, I hear you're doing this. Here's what I can offer. I actually have a friend who got a job on a big feature because she happened to be from the area that they were thinking of shooting in, and she reached out to the production company. She knew nobody there. But she said, this is a really quirky neighborhood. It's a quirky area, and having somebody who is a local on your team is going to really help you a tremendous amount. And here's what I can offer you. And they thought, that sounds good. And they hired her. And it was smart of them too, because she really was not lying. It was truly helpful. So network, stay in touch with people. Never be it shouldn't all be about what other people can do for you, but what you can do for other people. And honestly, don't bullshit people.
Yep.
I mean, there's a certain amount of bullshit, I suppose, that happens. There's a way to spin things that's more positive and less positive, and obviously you always want to spin things in the most positive way possible, but you never want to lie, and you never want to bullshit, because you will get caught.
Sure.
I will never forget, I was in a casting session. It was on a Disney Channel movie, actually. I was in a casting session, and this actor came in and read, and they were okay, they were fine, and the director asked them some questions about, some of their experience, and the actor said something about a movie that they had been on, that they had a, they had claimed they had a big part in, and or a reasonably big part in, and the director said, I directed that movie. I don't remember you.
Oh,
and
no. Oh, no. Wow.
It was awesome. I think maybe the guy was, an extra on it or something.
Sure.
And it's, it's one thing to spin it a little, but I mean, he was trying to go just a little too far, and he didn't do his research, or he didn't remember.
He didn't know.
I mean, how can you not remember who the director was?
Yeah, you had such an important part, and there's the guy who directed you day to day. Yeah, no, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, so there's that. And I think that, this is sort of philosophical too, but
Please.
The biggest thing is say yes to things, I mean, not always, you got to be smart about it, but be willing to take a leap.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I hadn't taken a leap, I wouldn't have done this last show. And It's a Dog's Life was a phenomenally great experience. Yeah. And I met some amazing people working on that show. Just amazing people who I think will be friends for the rest of my life.
Wow.
And I'm so glad, I'm hoping we get many more seasons, but even if we didn't, I cannot be happier that I worked on that show. It was just a great experience.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny. One of the things you mentioned at the beginning, the idea of what you can do for somebody else. I mean, I've of course heard that expressed a lot of ways and put it into practice, and been I've heard that and been cautioned, or instructed on that myself back in the day. And this idea of always, in kind of investing parlance or business parlance, being a value add. Where,
exactly,
bringing something that the other person really is excited to have. I mean, and I think the best scenario is if when you're trying to find the right partner for something, it's like, they from what you can glean, it's like, they would really spark. Do you think they would really spark to something? Or if you can identify. And of course, you wouldn't want to wear the super on your sleeve, but if you suspect that maybe they need it, like maybe the kind of thing that you have and you need their help on, maybe it's something they have previous competency and success with, and they've had a little bit of a dry spell, and it's not because they've developed a drinking problem or whatever. They just, it's just these things are cyclical. But you think, they have this resume of killing it in this type of a project, and right now, from what you can gather from your intelligence and research, you can gather that maybe they're not currently, maybe they had 3 great projects that all fell apart, and now they're sitting there trying to rebuild. And that's just,
you never know.
You never know. And finding the right, what are some of the things? I mean, all this overlaps because it's all sort of about human nature and communications and identifying needs and such. But how do you evaluate? I mean, the lack of bullshit is a thing that's very real, and can't stress that enough. But how do you sort of evaluate potential, partners, collaborators, investors, the whole nine, just people you're thinking of marrying yourself to professionally, because those divorces are sticky and.
Yeah, it's tricky. I have to say, I've had a couple of people who I worked with who, it's not that they were bad, but they turned out to be a waste of time.
Yeah.
And that's hard, and I think all probably had those people, and you just kind of will. I think sometimes the best thing, the only thing you can really do is, you look at what they've done. If you meet them and you get your own sense of how you feel about them and do you like them as people, but then that's great. They can be lovely people, still be a waste of time.
Yeah.
So you have to, I think, look at what they've done in the past, and just check them out with people who they have worked with. And if you know anybody, how did you meet them? How did you encounter them? I actually really I really and truly believe in vetting everybody and checking. The times that I haven't, I've really wished I did. Reach out to other producers or whatever who'd worked with some of these people and just say, hey, was Bob what he said he was?
Right.
Was he good? How was he to work with? Because it's also, part of it is about people being honest, and real, but it's also about what are they like to work with, and
right.
Do you want to work with them on it? Because when you get involved in a project with somebody, it could be for years.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
totally.
That's huge. Are you going to want to be in contact with this person for 2, 3, 4, 5 years? I don't know.
Yeah. I always say that to again, it's usually like young filmmakers or people who are starting in the business and curious for, advice, or whether it's crew people trying to advance their career. And I've said a version of this so many times, which is that, and I practice, I pay a lot of attention to this, because whatever budget level of the project you're doing, well, okay, so there's your certain budget level. That means if it's a union thing, it's like this contract, or if it's non-union, then still it's like, okay, well, on this show, our department heads are getting kind of, this is sort of the average salary tier. And then the number 2 people are getting this tier, and so you sort of know what people are what you have budgeted, and then you sort of know what you have available. And so, again, a place like LA or Atlanta or New York, someplace that has a giant crew base and a lot of production, if people are any good, they work. And they work. Again, this current situation has put a pause on everything. But and we'll get to that before we wrap. But for me, it's like, okay, so the people who you interview for a given job, say it's the say it's the production designer, and okay, well, at the tier where you are in terms of budget, you might get, say, 10 people you're going to evaluate, and you pretty much assume, they all should have relatively equivalent experience. They should have experience that at least qualifies them for the job you're doing. After that, so if they have enough experience to do it, and their take on it creatively or technically, depending on their job, like if they, if as long as they satisfy those criteria, then it comes down to who do you want to spend, 12, 14, 15 hours a day, sometimes for days and weeks and months at a time. If it's like on set, and if it's a executive producerial investor relationship. I'm curious what you've encountered with this, because one thing I've seen, and I won't get, I could easily tangent on this, and as you know me well, so I won't do that in a big way. But that's kind of a running joke for people who know me. But I've actually gotten better at that. But to prove it, let me get to the point, is to say that with investors, I've noticed this, and I'm curious what's your strategy for overcoming this besides just walking away or saying screw you. But sometimes people have made a whole lot of money doing something, unrelated to film. And then when somebody, through friend of a friend or family, when they are presented with like a film project, an indie film project, everybody's different. I've met first-time investors in film who are freaking awesome, and I've met people who are just a nightmare. And what I've noticed among the people who are a nightmare tends to be that they think they know everything. They tend to think, oh, well, I already got rich, and so I'm smarter than everybody on the planet. How do you deal with people who have here's the question. How do you deal with people who you need to deal with, maybe, or at least you need to not cut them off instantly because maybe they're going to be okay and come through. How do you deal with people whose concept of how the business works is different than how it works, and you still want to work with them? How do you sort of navigate that disconnect when you're dealing with somebody less experienced but maybe well-intentioned?
I think the first thing is to look at, make sure that your contract with them stipulates how much control or input they have into the film. You always want to make sure that you have the final say on things, because if they do, they can be very destructive. I actually have a friend who, a number of years ago, she and her partners made a movie. It was a pretty high budget indie film because it had a lot of music rights and things. And ultimately, with the music rights, the budget was $10 million, and they found it all from one investor. And that one investor, then they got into Toronto Film Festival. That investor was not happy with the distribution offers they got, and because of the contract, he had the right to refuse a distribution offer, and ended up never getting distributed because that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's very sad.
Wow. Yeah. Lose the whole 10 million instead of maybe making a deal you don't think is awesome, but it could get the movie out there.
But he thought he knew better.
Yeah.
He thought he knew better, and he clearly did not. So it's really sad. And it was a nice little film. I saw it, but it wasn't. It was too bad.
Nobody else will. Except friends of the filmmakers.
And there you go. Very few other people ever will. Yeah. So that's the first thing. But the other thing is, I think maybe, trying to get your personal relationship with them, I think matters a lot. And maybe getting a relationship where you're, just like they would be introducing you to their world, you are introducing them to yours. Exactly. And maybe that, I think, is going to be, maybe that's, if you can, the best way to go. If they're really not in the mode of listening to anybody else, that's a problem.
Yeah.
But you can still make it work if your contract is okay, but it's hard.
Yeah. I won't belabor the point with my, half dozen attaboy stories to that specific note, because the Lord knows I could. As far as it's funny, when I started kind of doing shows, as the pandemic kind of rolled along, I actually for a few weeks I was doing like a little special episode where I really just talked to people about how they're coping, and now it's like nobody cares. We just want to be done, but it's going to be a while. Could be another year.
I think it is. Yeah,
I think it's gonna be another year, or better, better part of. So let's not make this I don't want to belabor the point, but obviously right now we're waiting on production to resume in some way. What do you see as the road ahead in terms of production coming out of this exciting situation? And then I'm kind of then we'll skip past that to where it's normal and talk about the future of film and TV a little bit on the back end of this.
I honestly, there's so many different plans out there, and I think it's going to be really tricky and difficult. I think production, there's going to have to be, people wearing masks, people being, the whole taking your temperature thing and all of that. That's all great. I don't know that that's specifically as helpful as it could be. I mean, I think a lot of things are going to change. I think it's going to be more expensive by far to make films. And I think one of the biggest costs and the biggest thing I would be concerned about is insurance.
Absolutely.
And I don't know what's going to happen there. And, as far as the actual physical production, I mean, if you can do the Tyler Perry model where you're just like,
yeah, I'll bring everybody in, quarantine everybody on place, nobody with no ins and outs, and
it's awesome. Not many people can do that, but I think that would be the most ideal.
Yeah.
There you go.
I've been thinking similarly because of my movies. One's set in the world of Paris. It's set in Paris, and we'll mostly shoot there. There's a little stage work that we're going to do in New Zealand where we're posting, and then my other priority project is also New Zealand. Of course, they're open. I mean, production offices and like the Lord of the Rings TV show and the Avatar sequels. I mean, those offices have been open for weeks, and they've been back. To different degrees, they're back at it, and yeah, they're up and running. And like New Zealand, you mentioned, there's these plans. New Zealand published their screen safety guidelines, and it's. I mean, it's they've thought of. I think they've thought of basically everything. They have a very proactive approach to confronting reality, unlike some other administrations of other countries I could mention. Not to get political. So, in terms of sort of halfway on approach to landing the plane here, what are your thoughts about the way that tastes, viewing habits might be different after this? I mean, I know a lot of people there's all these predictions. Some people are predicting a theatrical bounce because once we can be out and about again, there's this idea that a lot of people will be excited to mix and mingle. But then, of course, there's the argument about how home viewing, with the quality of screens and sound and selection, it's like, well, it's great at home, and I want to get out, but maybe if I want to get out, I'll do this or that exciting adventure thing, and then when I want to watch something, I want to still be in control because I have all these options. What do you think? How do you think this is going to impact theatrical? I think is really the question, but I want to give the context so it could go anywhere it goes.
The interesting thing is theatrical was having its own challenges even before this.
Exactly.
So, and that's been an ongoing struggle, and because it's so expensive to go to the movies right now.
Yeah.
And if it's one person, it's one thing, but if you're a family of four, it's a whole other thing.
Oh yeah. Dropping $120 or something.
You
probably.
Could be very easily,
snacks and drinks and tickets for everybody plus
parking and or a couple going out for a date night with they have to pay for a babysitter and they, like all of that. I mean, it's pretty hefty. So I mean, I think exhibition is probably going to end up being more, group experiences and special, big films. Mm-hmm. I think it's going to go even more and more that way. I think something that is a smaller, more intimate film is going to end up more likely doing better streaming. I could be wrong about that, but I mean, I know from my personal feelings and the feelings of people I've talked to is most of us are like, it's going to be a long time before we go back to an actual theater. Like, we don't have to.
Right.
That's the problem. The problem that exhibitors have is we don't really need to go to a theater.
Yeah. I
mean, there is a difference in experience, and there are some movies that, like, I'm glad I got to see, Avengers Endgame on a big screen. I really am. And so for movies like that,
I watched it on a plane, but it was still fun, but it was different.
Yeah, you need to watch it on a big screen. It's different. And I was like, those kinds of movies I like to watch on the big screen first, and then I can watch them on a smaller screen and it's fine. But, so for movies like that, I think there'll always be an exhibition market. But, in this climate, I don't want to go to a movie theater. I don't want to get on a plane right now, frankly.
Well,
but,
right now,
if I have to, I have to. But it's going to be months before I'm willing to go back into a theater. It just is.
Like even after the supposed all clear.
Well, they're talking about the all clear here in LA coming not in the not too distant future, not the all clear, but the somewhat clear coming in the
Yeah.
not too distant future. And I don't know that that's all
Yeah,
clear for me.
I mean, I'm obviously
I don't,
I'm an indie
I
film
think it's
producer.
dicey.
I have no credentials in that other than that I was in China when all this came out, and I've been dealing with it for a few months longer than my friends here,
Yes.
so I've just been paying attention to it a lot longer. But I mean, other than that, I don't have any special
I think it's
knowledge.
dicey.
But I don't. Yeah, I mean, I think it's nuts. I mean, I know a lot of people who had an immediate family member die. I realized I posted something the other day. I did a little count because somebody else posted. I'm like, yeah, I think this is at least a dozen people I know personally who I have sat in person with and had a beverage or a chat, and their brother or mother or sister or kid, died. And so and that sounds like
I have a friend who lost 4 people. I have a
good
friend who lost
Lord.
4 people.
Oh my
I mean,
God. That's crazy.
that's horrendous.
Yeah. That's horrible.
She's Italian,
Yeah.
so maybe that's why. But I mean, it's horrible.
Yeah, no, totally.
Totally. I personally haven't lost anybody, and I'm grateful for that. But
neither. I'm fortunate in that way. But I just knowing all these people, I mean, it's a personal thing. So I think the rush to I think people are basically a bunch of wussies, frankly. I mean, I appreciate it if your job is that you must get out. I mean, the people who can't do like a work from home thing are the people that absolutely have my sympathies, but people who just can't contain themselves from needing to go to the damn beach can fuck off. And I'll just say that on my show because
I'm with you on that. Honestly, I sit there and I think about Anne Frank living in a freaking attic for 2 years, and I think we're a bunch of pussies who would never have survived World War II. We are certainly not the greatest generation.
yeah. I think the WW2 folks' legacy is intact for that title. I don't think we're in any danger. I don't think we're in any danger of wresting that from their mantle. Well, part of why I want to talk to you was how candid you would be. Do you have any what are you? I don't know. What are you hoping we take away from this collective adventure I mean, this can be bigger, broader Denise philosopher cap, or this can be, film entertainment business, and actually little of both wouldn't be bad. But what are you taking away from this, and what do you hope we take away, et cetera, from all this jazz?
Gosh, what do I hope we take away from all of this? That's an interesting question. That's a really interesting question. I mean, I honestly hope that we learn patience for the long game, because life is a long game, and certainly the film industry is a long game, and not having patience is not going to serve you well. And maybe a little bit of humility and humanity. Those things I think are very important as far as all of this kind of thing is concerned. I just I don't know. I feel like we are all, we've all become so focused on ourselves at the moment, and I get it or maybe we haven't all, but a lot of us have become very focused on ourselves at the moment and our needs without thinking about what serves the community as a whole. And I feel like we've kind of lost that aspect of society, and I think that's shitty. And I get that reopening and businesses reopening and the economy, I get that that's all important, but what good does it do to have the economy open if people are dead? That's my personal feeling. Other than the pandemic, as far as the film industry, there's so much opportunity. There's so much going on. There's so much that people, can do. I mean, be open to opportunities, be open-minded, be like, look for the and it's easy to say this, but and sometimes harder to do it, but if something isn't working, look for the unexpected way to make something work.
Mm-hmm.
Look for the unexpected opportunity. And I think I just think there's so much out there, and there's so much content that we need. I, by the way, think some of that will change too, because all this content is very expensive, and I think that's not sustainable. So ultimately, I think there's going to be some shrinkage in that regard. And I don't know where it's going to come from, because none of us really quite knows. So you have to be nimble. Mm-hmm. I think being nimble, being creative, coming up with, how can I make it work? Instead of going, oh, it doesn't work, come up with a way to make it work.
Nice. Denise Carlson, we could do this for hours, and because we have before, just without recording it. Without recording it, though. I know. And usually there's back in the day, there used to be there was a place we used to go that you introduced me to, that was the pictures of sangria were quite delightful. I remember. We'll have to. I'm keeping fast to keep. I mean, keto is my new lifestyle. It's not a diet, so but I can adjust. I can eat other.
And you
things
look amazing. By the way, I know this is a podcast and people can't see it, but he looks amazing. I will say. I
look different, that's for sure. Yeah, I look different. As of today, I'm 105 pounds down in 6 months.
Good Lord.
To the day. Today is 6 months to the day since I changed this aspect of my life, and I'm down exactly 105 as of this morning. So that's kind of wild. And what's wild is I got a lot to go. I thought, my original target was, within a little bit narrower band. I thought, I got 25 to go, and I see myself pre-shower. I'm like, nope, more than that. I got farther to go than I thought I did. Jeez. Anyway, Denise, thank you for this. We will have to do a big follow-up, and I'm congratulations on all success with your projects. I'm excited to see how this all plays out. And
well, I'm excited to see your projects too. The Paris-based project in particular sounds really interesting. So
thank you. Well, I'll invite you to the premiere if we ever get it made.
Yay!
Yay! Thanks.